Welcome back to the Gains for Girls podcast. Thank you for tuning in and listening. As always, you can check out OutKick.com for all things Gains for Girls. You can check out me, other OutKick personalities and contributors like Tommy Lauren or Charlie Arnold, of course, Clay Travis. Again, all of that at OutKick.com. Excited for today's episode. You may remember about a year ago, Governor DeWine, a Republican governor in the state of Ohio, who vetoed a pretty crucial piece of legislation. In Ohio, it was the SAVE Act, HB 68, which would merely ensure men aren't entering into women's sports, and it would protect adolescents from chemical and surgical castration. Seems pretty straightforward. It seems like something that someone with an R by their name could get behind. But unfortunately, that was not the reality in Ohio, as Governor DeWine decided to veto this piece of legislation. The House and the Senate was able to override his veto with a majority vote. But nonetheless, I believe this was political suicide for him. Flash forward to today, to where we are now. Another bill gets to his desk, SB 104, which is the Protect All Students Act, which would merely ensure that men aren't using girls' bathrooms and vice versa amongst all public and private schools, kindergarten all the way through college. A pretty holistic bill here. It gets to Governor DeWine's desk, and this time he signs it. I believe largely to do with the pushback and the backlash that he faced for vetoing HB 68, but a win that we're celebrating nonetheless, because kids are being protected and parental rights are being upheld, all very important things that the majority of people can get behind. And so for today's episode, we are talking to the co-sponsors of the Protect All Students Act on the House side. It is Representative Adam Byrd and Representative Beth Lear, and you can check out that episode here. Well, thank you both for joining the Gains for Girls podcast. Super duper excited for this conversation and just grateful for everything that you two have been able to advance, of course, in the state of Ohio, but really setting the standard across the nation. I've had your colleague, Representative Click on a while ago, actually probably about a year ago this same time, in talking about House Bill 68, which we'll briefly get into in a second. But before we get into that, I would love for you guys to very briefly describe the Protect All Students Act and what it does for students in the state of Ohio.
Well, the Protect All Students Act was designed from a friend of ours, a colleague who passed away early in the session, Chris Jordan. He had 3 kids in public schools, and he wanted to make sure that boys and girls were in separate facilities. If a facility is designed for more than one student and it's identified by sex, then only that sex should use it. So the bill we put together said that boys and girls cannot share bathrooms, locker rooms, or overnight accommodations, kindergarten through college. And that is the legislation that the governor signed last week.
Yeah. Riley, if I could add to that, superintendents from around the state of Ohio were coming to me and asking me for a bill like this. And this was becoming untenable for them. And you may remember that this nonsense started back in the late Obama administration. And so it was really becoming difficult. And when the Department of Education in Washington, D.C. was saying, you will implement this policy or we will take away your federal funding, they were leaving schools with no choice but to implement what Obama administration was saying. And so we know that some of the people that were Trump appointees, 16 through 20, they weren't all very loyal to Trump. And so it didn't go away during those years. And it was just getting so much worse. And so I think the timing of this bill being passed and signed, along with the new Trump administration, is going to be really refreshing for schools across Ohio.
I could not agree more. I think refreshing is a good word, because you're right. I do believe that our leaders have wanted to do the right thing for, as you said, almost a decade now, but haven't really been able to because of the fear of losing funding, which is of course, essential to operating. So I agree. I think you gave them the ability to do what they knew to be right all along. And so to be clear here, clarify, it's K through college, is that right? And it's both public and private schools?
Yes, all schools. And it also includes facilities off school premises that they might use. So if you have a swim team, but you don't have a pool and you use the Y, then the Y has to implement these same requirements while the students are there.
Riley, you bring up the issue of private schools, and that's a really important thing to bring up because they came to us multiple times asking us to please let us out of this bill. Please don't include us in this. And we as a private institution, some of them Christian, that wouldn't have a problem, but by principle, they wanted out of this bill, and we would not let that happen because we just thought it was so important that we protect all students, and that this is such an instrumental, principled right for young ladies to be able to go into a restroom, changing room, locker room, that we were not going to allow private colleges to take that away from them.
It's huge. I don't think we've seen a bill as it pertains to this topic in particular that is this encompassing really yet. So again, set the standard for the rest of the nation to follow. And again, feels timely with everything going on in the Capitol right now at a federal level. And we're seeing Congresswoman Mace and what they're dealing with up there. And so again, this is the gold star example of legislation to follow. I mentioned HB 68, but this bill was really important to me. I know, of course, both of you, but it was really personal to me in the sense that it was, again, all encompassing. It didn't just protect women's sports, but it also dealt with the issue of allowing children to undergo radical and irreversible and permanent surgeries and chemical castration for that matter. And it passed the House and the Senate, and it went to the governor's desk. To which ultimately, which is something I can't make sense of, he decided to veto, which I think really hurt him.
I think that the conversation in America has changed, and you're a part of the reason for why it's changed. Advocates like you have changed the conversation. It became part of the presidential election process. There was a lot of advertisements around that. And so the ability for certain college sports, women's sports teams to stand up and say, no, we're not doing this anymore. And it really started to have an impact. And I think that he saw that and really changed his ability to sign this.
I agree. No, I think that's pretty spot on. You've had some great support from the Lieutenant Governor Husted. I've been watching some of his interviews he's been doing and the articles that have been put out. You've got a phenomenal Attorney General who has pursued litigation against the Biden administration and the Department of Education surrounding Title IX, which has to this date actually been successful. But what's some of the pushback that you've had from teachers' unions and maybe civil rights groups?
I would say a lot of what we've gotten has been some under the radar. You know, you get the emails, you get the phone calls, you get the social media trolls who call you every name in the book and attack you and try to get you to respond in kind. But a lot of it is also behind the scenes, the nasty phone calls and the threats and, I'm sure you're getting it too. And we made a decision a long time ago that we were going to stand up for women and kids, and also for these kids who are confused about who they are, because is it really safe for a young girl who's been convinced she might be a boy to go into the boys' locker room? No. So we're willing to stand no matter what. I'm really proud to have been able to work with Adam Bird, former superintendent, and no matter what comes our way, we're going to take it. And we're going to keep going.
I would add to that, Riley, that the pushback, you ask about the pushback, it hasn't come from my constituents. It hasn't come from female athletes across the state. It hasn't come from school superintendents. The pushback that I have felt has come from the media. And certain members of the media have tried to advocate on behalf of the opponents of this bill. And I'm not just talking about a couple. We're talking about print media. We're talking about news and video media. And they're the ones who are really taking up this cause. And it makes you doubt sometimes the veracity of whether they're journalists or whether they're commentators.
I think that's a very good point. And we've seen these numbers on a national scale, like CNN and MSNBC, and outlets that are left-wing in that nature. Their numbers have been plummeting because I think people are beginning to wake up and realize exactly what you just said. And I think it's important, Representative Lear, what you mentioned. You guys have taken a stance not just in the best interest of people like myself who intuitively know that men and women are different, but you've taken this stance also to protect the best interests of those who identify as transgender. I think that's very pertinent in saying that the lies and that they're being fed, it's ultimately harmful to them and their well-being as well. So I really like that point. Did you guys, on this bill in particular, did you have support among elected Democrats?
Not publicly. Regrettably, we did speak with a few who wished they could vote with us, but the Democrat Party votes in lockstep, and if you don't go along, you're out. So that was really unfortunate that some people didn't have the courage of their convictions, because I know they really wanted to.
Of course. I think that's
I have nothing to add to that. It's really sad that people can't vote their conscience when they come here. And so I think people are waking up. And to Rep. Lear's point, Democrats don't want boys in their girls' sports. Democrats don't really want boys in their girls' locker room, but they're afraid to say it because cancel culture is still real. And so they don't want to be out there criticizing identity politics. And so that's true even in rural conservative Ohio, that the girls on the volleyball team or basketball team, it's hard to be the one to stand up the way you have. And I think you've been an inspiration to girls around America to be willing to stand up and unafraid, boldly stand on what is right. And I hope that you continue to inspire a generation of young girls to stand up for what they believe.
No doubt. I'm hoping, and I believe, I really feel actually that this cancel culture is fading. I really feel like that over the past month or so, especially. I mean, even over the past few weeks, it feels pretty exponential. Do you think that was proven? I mean, what do you think of the Senate and presidential poll numbers in Ohio? Because I believe that proved not only that people turned out to embrace Bernie Moreno, to embrace Donald Trump, but more so, I believe, especially in the state of Ohio, people turned out to reject absurdity.
They really did. And we had a poll too. I think it was a Baldwin Wallace poll that showed the numbers across all spectrums, ages, political parties. They don't want this crazy, I don't know what you want to call it, but the idea that kids can be cats, or that they can be the opposite gender, or that they can be an airplane. They don't want it. And they definitely don't want boys and girls sharing spaces in schools that are meant to be private. So I think it was really helpful. President Trump understood that. Lieutenant Governor Husted and Attorney General Yost understands that. So we've been really blessed to see things start to turn around here.
Yeah, I might add to that, Riley, that you bring up the election that just happened in Ohio. And so Bernie Moreno, as a U.S. Senate candidate, made this a big part of his campaign. And the man he was running against, the incumbent, Sherrod Brown, he would act like your moderate neighbor when he was in the state of Ohio, but he had a radical, woke voting record in D.C., and it finally caught up to him. And this was part of it. And to his credit, Bernie Moreno made this issue a part of his campaign. And it paid off because Ohioans were able to see who Sherrod Brown really was when he was actually voting.
Absolutely. And it wasn't just in the state of Ohio. We saw this same tactic used by Bob Casey, for example, and Dave McCormick, and it was the same outcome. What are some other high priority pieces of legislation that are coming up that we can be cheering you guys on, whether it's related to these cultural issues or beyond?
Well, we're in lame duck, so it's hard to say what's going to happen over the next month, but we're really hopeful for the new General Assembly that starts in January. We have new leadership. We're planning to move forward on some really strong Republican ideas. I've got education issues planned, which I'm sure I'll be sharing with Representative Byrd. And property taxes are such a big issue for Ohioans. We really need to be dealing with that. So what are some of the things that you're thinking about?
Well, you mentioned property taxes. That is huge in Ohio. And so we have got to stop taxing people. And in order to stop that, we're going to have to stop spending so much. And that's really difficult to do. And so, we've got property taxes, we've got sales tax, and we've got income tax. And we've got to find a way to lower all of those, but especially the property tax, because that's the one that affects grandma and grandpa who are now 75 or 80 years old. They're not working. They're on a fixed income. And yet the inflation of the housing market has caused them to be unable to afford the home that they're living in.
Yeah. My Senator Andy Brenner said we need our own Ohio Doge, just like Elon and Vivek are doing for all of us.
Hey, well, maybe Vivek can come back to Ohio at some point. I think that needs to be implemented in all 50 states and across corporate America and across academia, virtually every realm where this leadership hierarchy exists, especially within the Democratic establishment. I believe I'm on the same page as you guys. So grateful for your leadership, how you've been able to stand tall amidst all of the backlash and the pushback and the media smears, as you described. But nonetheless, please know you're representing, of course, your constituents, the people of Ohio, but you're representing the majority of Americans, and in the process, setting the standard for other states to follow. And so could not be more grateful. And I hope I get to see you, both of you, again at some point in the near future.
Thank you, Riley. Thanks for leading the charge and encouraging others to do likewise.
Absolutely. Your boldness is inspirational to our young ladies, and I hope that you continue that, and I hope that people like you can continue to inspire in states that aren't as red as Ohio, and we've got to keep this message going in other places and amongst the college crowd, and I think that's where you're so effective. Absolutely.
Well, thank you both. I cannot agree more with the idea of implementing Doge in every single state. Elon and Vivek, can we please get on that? I think us Americans on all levels could certainly benefit from it. Again, thank you guys for tuning in. As always, you can check us out at OutKick.com. Be sure to like and subscribe, and you can share these episodes with your friends. And we look forward to seeing you again next week. Hey everybody, thank you so much for watching. The fight to save women's sports and restore common sense is far from over, and I continue the conversation every week. So make sure to catch more content over here and subscribe to OutKick so you don't miss a thing.